It's just easier to play. You don't have harness.
Where are we? Earth. Okay, that's a good place to start. Well, I don't know exactly what anybody would like to do here, especially me. But if anybody has any ideas, yes, sir.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Well,
Who doesn't do that?
I knew that would be the first question.
You do that when you're a kid?
It's really done with a synthesizer that's inside my guitar. No, when I was a kid, somebody gave me a record for my birthday. It was called Hopalong Cassidy and the Singing Bandit.
All right.
And you know, like when you have those Bozo the Clown records, and every time it was turned, you have a little booklet that comes with it, and as the story goes along, and then like Bozo Under the Sea, he says, "Remember, kids, it's time to turn the page when you hear the bubbles." Well, in Hopalong Cassidy and the Singing Bandit, it was time to turn the page every time you heard the bandit go, "Yeah." And Hoppy's sidekick, you know, was it Gabby Hayes, I guess? "Hoppy, that bandit's in the vicinity. I can hear him now." "Yeah!" And turn the page, and sure enough, Hoppy'd be on the horse going after the singing bandit. And that's where I first heard that sound. And it intrigued me even then. I can't seem to get this one to stay up, but...
Did you learn to do it back then?
Well, yeah, and then we had this thing. There was one of the cowboy songs on the TV that I saw on Tom Mix or something. There's a song that goes, "I'm riding down the trail to Albuquerque. My saddlebags are filled with beans and jerky." I didn't know what jerky was at the time. "I've been riding up and down. Now I aim to see the town of Albuquerque." And so I learned this little song, and in my fantasy of the Wild West, out in this place called Ripley's Orchard, was an apple orchard up in the woods, there was a big old rock that stuck out, and it seemed like it was a mountain to me. So we called it Albuquerque Rock. And we'd go out there on Albuquerque Rock and sing, "I'm riding down the trail to Albuquerque," and go, "Hee!" No, we had calls as kids. We had these calls. And we'd sitting out there in the rock, we'd develop the calls. People would be up in the woods, other kids, you know, and we'd go, "Hey!" You know, like that. "Oh!" And just hollering, you know, like hollering. And,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Do you have the car keys?
Could you repeat the question?
What's that? Trying to take a run with the Free Mexican Air Force early in the morning. I needed the car keys. But yeah, and then I had a great back stairs in the house where I grew up, and it was the best place to sing and play ukuleles, and it was always dark and cool. I remember that, and it was in the back of the house. It had a great sound, so whenever there was a good sound, you'd all start fooling around with your voice and keep thinking of the Singing Bandit and the way he did that. Actually, I'd never used that particular sound. I tried to learn how to yodel from hearing cowboy music on the radio. You know, those songs, I mean, I can never, ever do it, but the songs that went, you know, like, "She taught me how to yodel, yodel-a-dee. She taught me how to," and then at the very end, they'd always go, and then they go faster, you know, it was like contest yodeling. And I didn't really like that stuff too much, so I kind of would just keep going.
You can't do regular yodeling.
No, I tried, but I can't.
Oh, come on.
Well, I can do a little of it.
At least Brett.
And then, you know, years later on, when I started buying records that were made by the UNESCO Foundation, and there would be like Ethiopian music and music of African pygmies, Tibetan chanting and things like this, and I'd listen to this stuff too, and I thought that those sounds were good, so I tried to incorporate them into kind of free singing. And there was another jazz singer named Leon Thomas who sang that quivering yodel kind of in pitch, you know, all through a song with Pharoah Sanders. And I listened to him, and I liked what he did. So I decided to revive the singing bandit style of yodeling. And around that time I was out traveling to the West Coast to get with my brothers and David Grisman and Olden in the Way after I left this band C-Train on the East Coast. And I was driving there and was camped out in northern New Mexico. And, well, it was southern Utah, really, overlooking Monument Valley. And by this time I had taken some sweat lodges with different people who had been with Indians and sometimes with Indians themselves, and heard how they'd sing and chant to raise spiritual power and strength. And when I wrote Land of the Navajo, I was overlooking the land of the Navajo. It was amazing, and the wind was whistling, and I was out on the edge of this mesa. And out towards the edge of the mesa, it got skinnier and skinnier until at the very, very end, it was about as, well, the boulder might have been just like the end of this stage here, and then a sheer drop for about a half a mile down there. And I remember sitting out there and scaring myself to death. And I went, it's kind of just a cry of, I don't know what kind of thing it is, you know. It's just a universal sound. Yodeling itself appears in all cultures and all kinds of music, and I like some of the African stuff. I've never heard American Indians actually do that. I use it as just in conjunction as a free expression with the chanting that I've picked up from the Indians of the Southwest. And would I play it? Well, maybe.
How about River of Stone?
Well, I know you don't want to keep hearing me talk, but if there's any questions about singing and vocalizing that I can answer, and then I can maybe do an example of them as we go along.
How do you do it?
Wait, could we have 3 people at once, please? I can. Okay, I heard your question, sir. Excuse me, sir, in the back, what was your question? Could you tell that bird to be quiet just for a second? That's my pal. Oh, wait, he's asking a question. The answer is yes.
The question is, are you still taking drugs?
If he answered his question, that is.
In a particular chord. Keep practicing. No. You're getting better. All right.
What about the formal training?
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. You'll see how little formal training I have when I try and answer this question about what parts you're supposed to sing. Like if you're playing a song, like, let's see. 10 years ago, on a cold, dark night, there was someone killed 'neath the town hall light. Generally, like your first note is, then the next guy would be 10 years ago on a cold, dark night. It's just the next note in the chord up, and you just kind of go parallel. like that. You just stay parallel, and largely it's by ear how it sounds, because you can do different things. You know, if there's only 2 parts, the second part can go up to the 5th, which would be, here's the 3rd, and the 5th, which would be the 3rd part, so that the whole chord would be. Just keep the chord happening. Wherever the melody goes, the other parts that's close harmony, they go with it. But if you're just using 2 parts, like a lot of Bill Monroe stuff, the duets, there's in 2 parts, so that the lead would be 10 years ago, and the harmony would be, or the Louvin brothers even are like this. They go, the second part would go up to the 3rd part because there's room to do it. They would go. You see, it wouldn't always just stay parallel at that point because you have more room. Without the 3rd part, the second voice has a lot more room to kind of space out. To listen to the right kind of singing, like that really shows that is the Louvin brothers, and of course Bill Monroe. But that's a little bit more kind of blues stuff. But just to understand the simplest of how those harmonies can move, the Louvin brothers do it. You'll notice they start out on the 3rd, and then the ira on the high part will move up to a 5th, sometimes leave more space between the melody and the harmony. As far as formal training, Bill Monroe kind of taught me a lot of things about singing, things he would say, and ways to, it's really just ways to use the voice so that it doesn't get tired. Because if you're doing it night after night, or maybe 2 shows a day, you have to, a lot of how you sing has to do with that. And if you sing properly or use the muscles right, where did our bird go? You know, I guess I answered his question too. If you use the muscles so that you're not putting like a lot of stress on your throat and stuff, I think it sounds pretty good too. But it also lets the voice relax, and you can keep singing, and you don't really need to warm up that much, but it's good to warm up. I've searched out different kinds of techniques and sort of trainings, but the real training I've had is just trying to last, you know, have my voice open up more and more, and not get exhausted in a singing situation, get hoarse and stuff like that. They say that yodeling is real bad for your voice, but what the heck, it hasn't hurt mine yet. Wow, that happened. Yeah, there is a kind of warm-up I do. I mean, if I was gonna say, yeah, what should you do to practice your voice, I'd say just to scales, you know, piano or guitar, just, you know, la 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 la, and take a good deep breath before you start. And every time there's a pause, take another breath as hard and deep as you can, so that you never end up like I sometimes do at the end of a line with no breath at all, kind of turning blue in the face. I'll show you what I mean, like, be like 10 years ago, on a cold, dark night, at the end of night, I was looking at a very pretty girl, so I forgot to take a breath, but I'll show you how this time. 10 years ago, on a cold, dark night, there was someone killed 'neath the town hall line. I mean, I'm exaggerating the sound, but really, if you breathe from your lower diaphragm, like in like a yogic kind of almost breathing exercise, practice like really deep breathing, but deep. Put your hand on your diaphragm, your lower stomach, and make sure that that's what's moving, not your upper chest. And then it's a sharp intake of breath before the next line that you sing. Like, down in the valley's so low, hang your head over, hear the wind blow. That way, every bit of that long line there that has spaces in between the words has the same breath value, the same intensity, and you have more control over the whole thing rather than trying to string it all out. Down in the valley, It's really important. Breathing, I'd say, is to me, is 90% of singing. The rest is just letting the throat relax and letting the breath carry the voice out. And the way to relax the throat is when you yawn. Go like that. Go when you yawn. Put your hand on your throat and feel where the muscles are. At that point, your throat is really open wide. And if you just go really lightly, especially in a room like down in your back stairs where I used to sing, and you can really hear the reverberation of your voice. You go like, Anyway, I've read that the voice is at its most open when you're yawning. The throat, the clavicle, whatever it's called there, these muscles and bone structure really open up when you're yawning. So if you study what happens when you yawn, you can do that, and your mate will say, "Oh, you're bored. I'm boring you." And you go, "No, I'm just practicing my singing, dear." Just But that's about all I do. Before I sing, sometimes, if I can remember it, having learned how those muscles react while you're yawning, everybody's yawning. It's nice, isn't it? So when you do that, and then you can, without yawning, you can make the muscles do the same thing as they do when they're yawning. And before I go on, I will try and stretch those muscles, just using the muscles themselves, like in the back of my throat, at the base of your tongue, in the very back of your throat, where it connects to or the tongue bone connects to the neck bone. And kind of like that. And if I'm out of shape, which sometimes happens if you're not on the road for a while, well, I don't really practice, but I'll just try and sing a couple of songs in tune before I go on. That's always good training. And so my training is just what I've picked up as I go along, what I've read a little bit. I've taken a couple of vocal lessons from a girl who used to sing with me, Estrella Berasini. She's a real good singer. See, here's the 1, 3, 5, but there's also a 5 right below the lead note. Wherever the lead note is, if you're singing the natural harmony above it, and then there's a natural harmony above that, the way it repeats musically is that the next note below the melody note is that high note, and then the, you know what I'm saying? It repeats itself. It's an octave lower than the super high part, yeah. The melody note, the second part, which is the tenor part, and then the high baritone part is also repeated just below the melody note. So sometimes you have to do that. Just if you know the melody, which is good to know, it's always, when you're singing harmony, it's always good to really learn the melody. Blue Moon Turns to Gold Again, he had James learn the melody because he wanted him to come along in this direction. So I would take the baritone part on some of those songs, yeah. Did wonders for me.
High lead? High lead, baritone, and low tenor?
Excuse me?
What were the parts that was it a duet or a trio?
With Bill, they were, when I sang baritone, they were trios, and it was low baritone. If you ever listen to the Osborne brothers, you noticed a lot of their stuff has a high lead. The lead will be way up high, and then the other two parts will follow underneath the lead part.
You seem to use a technique more than many people, though, of being right on the mic. Even from way back in C-Train, even as you moved around, you were almost on that mic.
Well, the problem is with the microphones, like now these mics are a little finer, are meant for like a little bit more interplay. I could have 3 or 4 musicians up here, and we'd only need to use one of these mics. But, okay, these are good. They have more of a round, you see, even from over here you can sing into them, like for vocal harmonies and stuff, but still they're right, well, yeah, see, on the side it doesn't have much going on. In the old days, in the radio shows, they used to have like microphones that you could stand 4 feet away from, and they'd pick up everything in the room. Now all the microphones are rock and roll mics, and in rock and roll, if you stand back like this, all the music, all the electric stuff comes into the microphone and you can't hear anything. It's too loud. Everything's changed according to the dynamics of the music. In bluegrass, it's best around one beautiful microphone that just sort of picks up, and then there's a sensitivity. But anyway, the reason that I stay on top of the mic is because these mics are built to pick up resonance up close. See, if I'm back here, you're just going to get the high end. So if I'm singing hard, I can get back, you know. So a lot of what I do is like, but at the same time, it seems to be what's happening musically. So, you know, I mean, on stage, I've had to learn that it's not the same as for the audience. You know, often on stage, things may not be at all.
What inspires you to write songs like Foolish Pride and Thirsty in the Rain, Riverstone? Are you getting special inspirations? Or?
Yeah. For each one of them, there's a
different personal experience?
Yeah, pretty much personal experience. My Foolish Pride was hearing, it's a personal experience, but what's made the experience come out in my imagination was hearing somebody bad rapping somebody else with all this real pride about, you know, and the person was right because this person was treating him really bad, but at the same time, it just brought to my mind how, anyway, what the song talks about, how pride is this kind of driving force that, you know, and then the song's the song. God, I can't talk. The song's the song, yeah. Okay, well, I'll sing that song, My Foolish Pride. Well, it was early Sunday morning, without any warning. My woman awoke and said, I've got to get away. At first I laughed with the pain, then I cursed without shame. I said, go ahead, you always wanted your own way. But if you go, leave the door to your heart open wide. You're taking your love and leaving me here, but I've got my pride. Now I'm laughing out loud, but I'm crying deep inside. You're taking your love and gone and left me with my foolish pride. Now the dawn is broken with all the tears we've spoken. You know I never meant the meanness anyhow. In my heart I'm begging you to stay, but pride is getting in my way. Now there's nothing left that I can say out loud. But when you go, leave the door to your heart open wide. You're taking your love and leaving me here, but I've got my pride. Now I'm laughing out loud, and I'm crying deep inside. You're taking your love and gone and left me with my foolish pride.